Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is May 7th, 2024. And, well, the offseason just continues to roll on. I'm Mike Yuva, and I'll be joined shortly by Intern Joe. That's why we're starting a little bit late today. See the comments. I'm sorry for the delay. God Loves Comics says 10 push-ups for every minute you're late. 90 so far. All right. I'll have Intern Joe do that. Maybe we can do it on the broadcast at the end. Put him to work. Cocky Joe says, that worked. There you go. There you go. Plenty to talk about on today's program. Last night, if you missed it, if you were under a rock, Shane Beamer, part of his Welcome Home tour, he was in Florence, and he gave us some news that I don't know if it's really like surprising news, but, you know, we'll cue up the breaking news music. LaNorris Sellers is your starting quarterback coming out of the spring, as announced by Shane Beamer on Monday night. Now, I noticed they're going to say, all right, and water's wet, fire's hot, whatever you want to insert. I get that. But at the same time, too, this is the first time, whether it be in the actual spring practice period or post-spring practices, that Beamer has come out publicly and said, all right, yes, Sellers is going to be our guy, at least right now. We'll play a little bit of the sound bites that Shane had last night from Florence. I'm paraphrasing, but for those of you who may have missed the story, may have missed the video that you can see on Gamecock Central, basically what Shane said is it's Sellers' job, but he has to continue to earn it in the summer. That's something that he told not just LaNorris, but that's something he told Robbie Ashford, the transfer from Auburn, as well as the other quarterbacks in that room as well. And I think if you saw that spring game, you continued to keep up with what was being said in the press conferences, whether it be from the coaching staff, whether it be from the players, whether it be from LaNorris. And I wrote a story about this over the weekend on Gamecock Central, that there were things that I noticed about Sellers this spring from a maturity standpoint that really just stood out to me, but impressed me as well. I'm talking about things that he did on the field, talking about in the spring game, some of the things he did, whether it be the way he protected the football, the way he went from his progressions, the way how if there was a hole there, a running lane, that he would take off. He was very committed to his decision-making. He was smart with the football. And obviously in that spring game, very limited in terms of what we saw. I think he only passed the ball 11 times, 9 for 11. But that opening drive, I think he went 4 for 4, marched right down the field. There was a lot of good things that he did. Off the field, though, some of the comments that he made really showed his maturity, the way that you would want from your leader. And I think, too, and obviously this is talking season, so am I digging too deep into some of this? I'm sure. But again, we have, 3 months to go until this team reports. By the way, Shane Beamer announced last night that, tentatively speaking, the Gamecocks will report, pull up the date, make sure I have this date correct, that the Gamecocks will report on August 1st for fall camp, and practice number 1 is, again, tentatively scheduled to begin on August 2nd. So with the way the schedule works this year, Gamecocks are playing on August 31st against Old Dominion. Things get bumped up a little bit. So that's why they're reporting a little bit earlier. Really not when you break everything down based on when the game's played, based on when they typically report. Typically, we've been reporting that first week of August in years past anyway. But having said that, the other part about LaNorris, talking about some of the things that he's noticed in his game from a maturity standpoint, and just being open about, there's things that I see totally different now. Things are starting to slow down because I understand the why. We talk about this a lot in this program. I understand why I'm doing it. It's not just, all right, go out there and do it. And he also talked about, and we played the soundbite during the spring, that offensive coordinator Dal Loggins has been on him more, and rightfully so. You don't have Spencer Rattler in that room, as Shane Beamer has mentioned in the past, specifically talking about how he's seen LaNorris step up, knowing that you don't have that guy in there anymore. Because guess what, pal? You are the guy. You're competing to be the guy. And as Beamer mentioned on Monday night in Florence at the Welcome Home Tour. He is the guy coming out of spring practices, which, again, shouldn't surprise anybody. But that's kind of where we're at right now. That's kind of where we're at. The other thing, too, that I would mention is how Beamer has seen him grow, being more vocal, just being that guy who, comes in and understandably so comes in last January, should still be a senior in high school. And in just a span of just over a year now, he's been able to take those steps forward from a vocal standpoint and be that leader that this team is looking for, especially knowing that you're replacing someone as not just talented, but someone that certainly brought a lot of experience with Spencer Rattler. All right, going through some of the comments, and we'll get to the video from Shane Beamer last night in case you didn't see it. We'll do what we always do. We'll play some of it. We'll stop it. We'll discuss. We'll keep it rolling about, 15 minutes long. Talked about a good amount of things last night, not just about Sellers. Talked about the transfer portal. That second window closed last week. That doesn't mean, though, that you can't go into the portal. It just means players themselves cannot enter the portal. So we'll talk about that as well. I thought there was an interesting comment that he gave me when I asked him, because I'm sure for those of you who follow Gamecock Central, we share it on this show so many times. If you go on Gamecock Central, there's a breakdown on the scholarship count for the football team. And if you've been paying attention to it, even with some of the new additions, some players leaving after the spring game, not major surprises there, the ones that left, that as of today, South Carolina is full on scholarships for their projection for the fall. They're at that 85 limit. So I asked Beamer, does that number really mean anything, at least right now? Because you're continuing to go into the portal. So he gave a good answer, but I also think, too, in this new era of NIL, he mentioned something that other teams certainly have been doing, and he said they have been doing, but it could be something to keep an eye on, certainly moving forward, again, in this new era of college football. So we'll play that soundbite in just a little bit. Jacob says, so push-ups for Joe. I know, what should we do with Joe? Should we have him just do all the push-ups? I don't know. We'll see. He says he's booting up right now, so we'll have intern Joe on in just a little bit. Cocky Joe says, did you see Brad Crawford, SEC quarterback rankings, Mike? He has Sellers at 15. Believe that will come back as a questionable take. I didn't see that. Certainly Brad works over at the competitive site. Works for 24/7. I had not had a chance to see that. But then again, it's talking season, so there's going to be a lot of lists out there. And I'm sure we'll have some lists ourselves over these next couple months. 3 months, less than 3 months, until the Gamecocks report for camp. William Jones says, I was impressed by Braswell too, Mike. No question. We've talked about it. DJ Braswell did a good job. I shared this in, was it Quick Slants? You lose track of the dates here. But recently, I wrote a story. Let me go back and see so I can find it for you guys. All right. So what we're doing is I've been doing a breakdown. It's called Post-Spring Assessment of South Carolina's blank room. So, we're going from room to room. So I did one on the quarterback room, but I think it was just yesterday. Shoot, this is how you know you're losing track of time and dates and everything. Did a story yesterday on South Carolina's running back room, just my post-spring assessment. And I don't know if you guys will agree with this, so weigh in on what you think on this take. But heading into the spring, and we already knew that Rocket Sanders, coming back from a labrum injury, had surgery, that he wasn't going to be a go this spring. We already knew that. And yet, heading into it, I shared that despite not practicing, I believe Rocket Sanders would be the week 1 starter. Well, he didn't do anything to hurt his chances, and I wrote some of this. Again, you can see the full story on Gamecock Central. Really gives you a deep breakdown, and we'll do this for every positional group, a deep breakdown on what each room looks like from a scholarship standpoint. From quarterbacks, I also threw Bevel in there simply because that quarterback room is so small from a scholarship standpoint. But we're going to go position to position, give my assessment, my 2 cents on where things stand coming out of spring. And we also will share our week 1 prediction for starters. But having said all that, while I don't think Rocket Sanders did anything to hurt his chances, obviously, I don't think Attaway or Braswell should be overlooked, especially not week one. While Sanders is on track to be back at 100% for the start of fall camp, he'll be playing catch-up behind two running backs who are coming off strong spring practices as well as strong spring performances in the spring game. It's because of that has me leaning towards Attaway having the slight advantage to get the start week one. Shoot, I'd even throw Braswell in there. Two, because of what he's proven, not just this spring, but what he's proven in the past. So I say that to say, look, I think Rocket Sanders, if he is the Rocket of old, what he was able to do, especially when he was healthy at Arkansas, he will be the guy. Regardless, at some point, he will be the guy. However, I'm not overlooking, especially if it's week one, right? Regardless of who starts week one, Sanders, again, trying to be the guy, trying to ease him back into things. I don't think it's far-fetched to believe that we could see, whether it be Attaway, whether it be Braswell, who I was very impressed with as well in that spring game. So that week one, look, we knew, I should even say, going back to the winter when South Carolina was bringing in the number of players they were bringing in at that running back position via the transfer portal, that there was a lot of talent there. And certainly you need to be able to stay healthy. We know that starts with that. But I'm not overlooking those two. And I know Juju McDowell's in there as well. You got Howell coming in from SC State. But to me, right now, man, don't sleep on Attaway. Don't sleep on Braswell to potentially be that week one starter. I really like the way Braswell ran in that game. I thought he hit the holes hard. He didn't dance around. One stat that really impressed me, and also you got to give credit to the offensive line for this stat, but on his 5 carries, whatever the heck he had, 4 or 5 carries, 6, he didn't have any negative rushes. He just kept going forward. This is a guy who, unfortunately, wasn't able to redshirt last year because of the injuries that piled up towards the end of the season, so he had to play in 5 games, but he did some good things in, when I say all 3 phases, both as a runner, receiver, and in pass protection. And I felt like from a running standpoint, at times he was hesitant. He'd be kind of dinking around a little bit and wouldn't just, hit the hole. But I think now, number one, he has a year of experience under his belt, so that goes a long way. But number 2, I think it also is a testament of what we're seeing from Marquell Blackwell, the new running back coach, and just some of the things that we've heard in his approach and how he goes about coaching his room. And we're seeing it with not just Braswell, we're seeing it with multiple players. Look at some of the walk-ons in the performances they had in that spring game. Some of those guys certainly have been here for a while. I think of a guy like Nathan Harris-Wainick. But you're seeing a lot of similar qualities in that running back room. It's not just limited just to one player. Continuing to move down. God Loves Comics is 15. Talking about LaNorris Sellers. Travis Edwards says, what's up, GC Live fam? Cocky Joe. Giving a shout out to Travis. Cocky Joe says, Braswell's going to be a good one. I think he will be. I think he will be for sure. Justin Lee asking about the transfer portal. We will get to that. I promise, Jonathan, excuse me. Michael Lynn says, Fuller and Braswell will be our downhill north-south running backs. Yeah, that's the other thing too, Michael, as Michael mentioned. Matthew Fuller, he's not even here yet. He didn't have a chance to go through the spring. I've mentioned this before. I think with the way that running back room is looking right now, I think the plan will be to redshirt Fuller. I don't think that I'm going out of a limb by saying that, just based on, again, the experience in the room, that talent in that room. And I don't think it would hurt him, especially not having the opportunity to go through a spring. Now, we've seen players come in who weren't here in the spring, and sometimes they were thrust into those roles because of injuries. You look at the case sometimes with like a guy like DQ Smith, Nick Emanwuri. You look at last year's team on the offensive line because of injuries, right? Luedecke Babalade. You also had Trevon Baugh. But being able to have 15 practices in the spring under your belt certainly helps you out a lot because the game starts to slow down for you. Game starts to slow down. I mean, going from playing, at Irmo High School or whatever the case may be, Sumter High, whatever, and then you have to go playing in the SEC, especially as a true freshman, having an opportunity to go through that practice. In this case, with Fuller coming from Georgia, good football there, but still having that opportunity to be able to get accustomed to everything around you. So that's something that I'll be paying attention to with Fuller over time. But again, that's just my early take on it. We'll see how he performs right away. We'll see. William Dean says, Howell's going to be good. I'm excited to see Howell. I don't know what the plan will be for him this year. He still has the option to be able to redshirt. I say option in air quotes because sometimes it's, not a player's choice, more so a coach's choice, but we will see how that plays out. Michael Lynn says, I'm pretty content on both sides of the ball. We could be a good team. Michael Lynn, I like the depth at wide receiver, running back. We'll talk about the wide receivers, especially with the additions they've had this past week. This intern Joe is messaging me, having some issues, so we can all give him crap when he hops on. Joking, of course. But maybe I'm not. All right, so I just sent that to intern Joe. And there he is, intern Joe, joining us. William Dean says, Attaway. We'll go with that spelling. Attaway, Adaway. And there's our intern Joe. Continue to go through Cocky Joe. All the running backs are viable options. I think the thing about it is when I mention we use someone like Howell, for example. If South Carolina wanted to redshirt him, right? And I mentioned I believe that at least right now, we'll wait and see how things play out. Knock on wood, everyone stays healthy because that certainly throws a wrench into things if guys get hurt. But if you redshirt Fuller, you look at Howell's situation, I think the question now becomes, how many touches does he see in that room? Now, there could be a case where, and I'm making this up, he's still seeing 8 touches a game. And that's not to say he could go into fall camp and have a phenomenal fall, and he could be, one of the top 2 guys in that running back room. But based on what we saw in the spring, based on the situation currently with some of those guys, some guys being obvious like a Rocket Sanders, like this is his last go. You have to ask yourself where, not just a player factor in, but what's best for him. Now, I understand in this new era of college football, people are going to be worried sometimes. And I know we're talking about how this could be anyone, about a player potentially wanting to transfer out. That could happen to anybody, though. I mean, Johnny 4-star could come in here and have the year of his life, and he still might want to leave. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, shoot, remember the juice box? I mean, yeah, so things happen. Things happen like that. But again, and Joe, we were just talking about this, and let me know what you think. I've been doing the post-spring assessment on how each room looked. My overall thoughts, especially from a scholarship standpoint. And one thing I mentioned on Gamecock Central yesterday is that while we already knew Rocket Sanders was going to be out this spring, and he didn't hurt his chances of being, a week 1 starter, I don't think you can overlook the job and the performances that we saw, not just in the spring game, but in spring practices by DJ Braswell and Oscar Attaway, to a point where I would not be shocked if one of those 2 guys in particular become your week 1 starter, especially knowing that, okay, Rocket, he's going to have a chance to be able to go out there August 2nd. Again, tentatively is when the Gamecocks are slated to begin practices. So you look at that, you have what? 30-something days, less than 30 days to get ready for your first real game, obviously, in a year. But you have to be able to get some contact. You need to be able to take some hits. And I think I would not be shocked if they ease Rocket back into things. And especially if they feel confident enough with what Attaway did in the spring, combined with what Braswell did in the spring, on top of what he showed towards the end of last season when he had to step up because of the injuries. If you do that, man, this running back room, it could only help in terms of that depth. So, again, Rocket Sanders, is he guaranteed a week one spot as a starter at that running back room? I don't know. And that's not a slight against him. I think it just speaks volumes of the job other players did, especially Braswell and Attaway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree, Mike. And first off, nice shirt. I love your shirt repping
Check
Intern
out
Joe.
Intern Joe's show on Sundays.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you guys missed it, check that out. We had a good show on Sunday, me and Wes Mitchell. But yeah, no, the running back room, Mike, I agree fully with what you're saying. I think Oscar Attaway is certainly capable of taking that starting running back role. And I mean, we knew he was going to be in the rotation regardless, because you don't go out in the portal and get a guy of that caliber if you don't plan on playing him right away. So I think Attaway's the guy that's going to lead out of camp. I know you mentioned Braswell too, certainly capable as well. But yeah, Rocket will also be involved. But yeah, I think they're going to ease him into it, right? Especially as much injuries as you've had with the running back room these last couple of years with Marshawn Lloyd and CDS and the ups and downs you've had in that room, right? You don't want to push your main, or I guess the headliner of the transfer portal class and Rocket Sanders out there and hurt him so early on in the season, right? You stacked up your running back room for depth purposes, for the specific purpose to be able to make it through the year, right? Because as well as I do, playing running back in the SEC is not easy, right? And you're going to get bumps, you're going to get bruises. And so there's a lot of depth in this room now. And so there's no reason to push Rocket Sanders back if he's not ready. You have really capable guys, that being Oscar Attaway and also DJ Braswell, as you mentioned, Mike, the two guys. And then, I mean, we could see McDowell too, but McDowell's also banged up. And I mean, I don't think they're going to rush McDowell back either, right? D'Lo likes, Juju's kind of his nicheness, if you will, with, just his skill set and his ability to, kind of bounce inside, his speed. So I wouldn't expect to see Juju, rushed out there either. And again, when you have this much depth, they're going to use it, right? So I think that's one of the biggest superpowers of this team going forward, right? You finally have depth in the running back room, and it's a breath of fresh air for these coaches, right? Because I mean, you had been battling up and down with injuries these last couple of years in the running back room. Couldn't really establish a run game last year. So I'm sure Coach D'Lo is very happy to have some depth. And again, knock on wood that it continues, right?
So a couple things. Gavin, the injury that Rocket suffered was he tore his labrum towards the end of the season when he was still at Arkansas. Going back and look, trust me, if there's one player that I'm never going to overlook or forget, I mean, I mentioned it multiple times in the spring and even going back to the fall last year, is Juju McDowell. I think the reality is this. Let's look at it in comparison to Rocket's situation. Okay, both players are injured. Obviously, Juju's situation, he tweaked his labrum. I think he fell on it at one of the first couple practices in the spring, and they decided to hold him back just to be safe. So you don't have an opportunity to go through the spring. Obviously, he knows the system because he's been here. But with Juju, when I think of Rocket, and the reason I'm bringing both those players up, because you weren't out there this spring, Braswell, Attaway, in my opinion, they closed the gap between where they were once they got here. And obviously Braswell already was here for a year, but Attaway coming in, it's like, all right, we know what Oscar can do. We saw what he can do at North Texas. Can he do that, though, at this level? Now, obviously, this is all, this is like SAT prep, tester, fake test or whatever the heck you want to call it. I don't know. Been removed too much from all that stuff. But point being is this is getting you ready for the actual exam. So only time will tell with a guy like Attaway, with a guy like Howell, with a guy, I mean, shoot, some of these other transfers at other positions from smaller schools. Having said that, Oscar came in here and did exactly what he needed to do, in my opinion, to be able to close any gap if there was one. And I say that simply because Rocket has had that opportunity of playing in the SEC. Juju, he's been in the SEC. So they both players made the most of that. Howell did as well. So I think the interesting thing, and you mentioned niche, right? What is that role for Juju? Because Juju's not the type of player that's going to run between the tackles, 8 times, 10 times in a game. Shoot, I don't know if he'll run 5 times between the tackles. And that's all right. He doesn't have to be that guy. But I also think, too, and we saw it last season, especially when he was healthy towards the end of the year before he got hurt. When you get the ball out into Juju's hands, he can be really special. He could be special, whether it be screens, whether it be speed sweeps. Like, he is someone that can be dangerous. And when you look at the skill sets, and I think someone asked me a question about Robbie Ashford. We'll get to that in a little bit. When you look at the skill sets from just the quarterback standpoint, both Robbie and Sellers, both players have the ability to extend plays with their legs. Now, unfortunately for Robbie, Marquis Anderson goes down in warmups. That back tightens up, and he's running for his life because now the black team in the spring game, they're having to play musical chairs with their offensive line. The offensive line is already, divvied up because it's a spring game. So I bring that up to say I think we will see more design runs for the quarterback this year. But I also think, too, and I know everyone likes to go friggin' RPO happy, not everything's an RPO. Sometimes it's a read option. Sometimes it's a triple. Like, there's other layers to it as well. And I think we will see that. And being able to incorporate Juju into the offense and taking advantage of his skill set is something that you certainly want to do. We've talked about this from a wide receiver standpoint. Yes, they've been able to bring in a couple wide receivers via the transfer portal, one player in particular being 6'4", but outside of that receiver, outside of Nick Harbor, you don't really have a lot of height at wide receiver. So how can you combat that? Well, you take advantage of the fact that you have a lot of friggin' speed in that room, running routes sideline to sideline, a lot of drags like we saw, deep drags like we saw with Xavier Leggett even last year. You add in a guy like Juju to motion, right? A little play action, some screens. Think about just the window dressing that you can be able to create from an offensive standpoint to really confuse teams. And guess what? If they're paying attention to a guy like Juju in the backfield in motion, and then you throw in the fact that you have a really talented running back out there, whether it be Braswell, whether it be Rocket, whether it be Attaway, whatever the case may be, it's going to be pick your poison. And what that's going to do more than anything is it's going to create a lot of one-on-one opportunities on the outside, and then a lot of just one high safety looks. And if you do go across the middle and you have that speed, teams are really going to struggle playing man on this team. And they're going to have to play zone. And at that point, it's, all right, Sellers, here you go, kid. They're playing cover 2. They're playing cover 3. They're playing cover 4. You have to make the throw now. You have to be able to time it up just right. So I know I'm getting, I'm all over the place just thinking about, but those are some of the things that come to mind with it when I think about what Juju can do from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And I'm glad you brought up the wide receiver room too, because they just added 2 guys that can help with that too, which is more options in the receiver room. Wes and I talked about it on Sunday a little bit with Delvon Campbell, right? Another 6'4" guy, just more options, right? Are those the 2 guys that they added? Or are they going to be, the guy that breaks through? We're not quite sure yet, but again, I think it just gives you options and the window dressing. I'm glad you brought that up, because all you need is a little bit of success with each guy in the room, right? All you need is one or 2 big plays with Juju McDowell, and teams are going to honor that and respect it now and expect that look. So you just need to find a little bit of success with every guy in that room, and then you're right, Mike. It opens up so much more on the outside, and then you just tell your quarterback, go beat him, right? Like, you're going to get vertical, and that's what it goes back to, kind of the pro style offense. I saw there was a question about, like, are they going to get, like a little bit more fun and not just get away from the pro style? No, I don't think so. I think there will be like obviously the circus plays, if you will, or the kind of crazy plays where you dump it to Juju and there's kind of a swing past the outside, maybe something like that. But I think at the base of it, it will be pro style, because you're looking to try to get that cover 2 on the outside and just get vertical, right? So and again, I think all this boils down to is the depth in the running back room. It starts there, because, Mike, I mean, we talk about it, we say it all the time, is you need to be able to run the football in the SEC to find success. And last season was example of when, you can't run the ball, what happens. So, all this team was missing was a running attack. And now, I mean, going into fall camp, again, knock on wood, you've got one, right? You've got some depth. You're in a good spot. You feel good enough to the point where, you trust your running backs, at least going into the season, to get you some yards, get you enough yards to open up that passing attack, keep enough guys in the box, and then because you have so much speed on the outside. Jared Brown, Gage Larvadane, Nick Harbor, ridiculously fast on the outside. So if you can, find a way for get opponents to stack the box and honor your run game, you're going to have so much success on the outside. And we know how dynamic Lenorris's arm is. And then again, also on the move too. I think, you're going to see some RPO stuff on the move as well. And that's just going to be, it's going to be big. Talk about Dowlog. Mike, we could sit here and talk about D'Lo's offense and the potential that it has.
Sure, we'll have plenty of time.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
have plenty of time. I'll tell you this, not to get too sidetracked. I wasn't going to bring this up today because it really, didn't have a reason to get in there, but you mentioned that. I got a phone call today from Elshon Jeffrey, and Elshon was just picking my brain about, how things were in the spring and this and that. And we started talking about D'Lo because obviously he had an opportunity to work with him when he was in Chicago. And I asked him, I said, in my mind, Elshon, I said, obviously there were things that Spencer did very well last year, but at the same time too, you have a quarterback coming in here that has a different type of skill set, but on top of that, he's younger. And I asked him, I said, how do you think that's one thing that D'Lo will get creative? And he's like, absolutely. And we've heard D'Lo talk about it in the past, right? And we've talked about how D'Lo won't, not to take a shot like at Marcus Satterfield, but it felt like at times when Satterfield was here, he was really trying to make things happen. Like in his mind, he wanted to do a certain pass play, a certain run play, and he was so locked in on doing it, even though they didn't have maybe the tools in the old toolbox to be able to do X, Y, Z. So we've heard Dal talk about it in the past that you can't just go out there and do whatever the hell you want. You have to work with what you have. Well, we've made some crappy analogies before in the past, right? Like you can't go into the kitchen wanting to make a filet mignon if all you have is some Fruit Loops and, some Cheerio, whatever the heck the case may be. So hearing it from Elshon saying again, this is just reassurance. Now, obviously, only time will tell, but going back to that quote from Loggins, and this goes back to over a year ago when he was introduced as offensive coordinator for South Carolina, combined with what Elshon said today, I really believe that we will see an offense. And again, the way that the schedule works this year, having those two buys is going to be very interesting. And the reason I say that is I think that we could see waves of this team in terms of evolution of what the offense is looking like, right? You go out there, you try to do what you have planned for the beginning of the season, right? You have a difficult stretch. I believe is it October? I don't have the schedule right in front of me. Granted, the whole friggin' schedule just seems like a gauntlet, but then again, that's the SEC now. SEC on steroids, as I'm calling it, with Texas and Oklahoma in the conference now. But you're going to have an opportunity in season, just like every other team will, to take a step back and really be able to evaluate what's working, what's not. Because in years past, you only have that 1 week. And certainly, don't get me wrong, because both weeks will still be a week that will be an opportunity to be able to get healthy, but it will really allow you to take a step back and reassess what's working and what's not working. And I think we will see an evolution with this offense compared to what it will be week 1, week 2. I think we will see it, again, in waves. It will evolve over the season. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that at some point. I do want to get into some of the comments that Shane Beamer had to say last night. And Greg said name dropper. Martin, casually get a phone. Well, I'll say this. There's I'm trying not to give too much away. There could be a project in the works that Elshon and I have been talking about. So stay tuned. And when we can talk more about it, and more importantly, when everything's friggin' done with it, I will share more about it. But Elshon has been paying close attention from afar, but I can tell you that he definitely wants to be able to get. He's talked to me a lot about wanting to learn more about the Garnet Trust and NIL and wanting to help student athletes, like kind of be like a mentor in a lot of ways. So, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I share that part to say like, that's pretty cool. Like Elshon's one. He's all the way out in California. I think he's living out in San Diego. Really enjoying the weather, but yeah, I mean, he's still paying attention to what's going on here. No question about it. God Loves Comics says, can Elshon come down and work with Nick on potentially high point of the ball? That was one player. That he asked me about today, and he's excited about him. But having said all that, Hijink says, what's up, Mike? Enjoy the article on the QBs. Again, that is the assessment, post-spring assessment that I'm going to be doing from position to position. If you had an opportunity to read I think I was like giving everyone kind of like a tease leading into the spring of what each positional room looked like from a scholarship standpoint. Similar in that sense, but takeaways are different. Week 1 predictions, some of it's already tweaking around a little bit. So that's what you can expect in these articles that Hijinks is mentioning. Said, what year is Ashford? Wondering if he would be looking to go somewhere and play should he not win the job this year. So I know this isn't exactly what you're asking right off the back, but I think it's important to mention the timing. And granted, Beamer had this conversation with Ashford last week about Sellers being the starter post-spring. And obviously, again, he still has to be able to earn it during fall camp. But it just coming out publicly now is interesting. And the reason I say that is, hypothetically speaking, if Ashford wanted to enter the portal, he can't do that right now. Portal's closed now. So that's just something that stood out to me. Number 2, talking about Ashford's situation as far as eligibility is concerned. The interesting thing is we talk so much about Ashford coming from Auburn. He actually played at Oregon first. He actually played some baseball too. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining. So, is there always a possibility? There is. And I just, I say that because what I've learned, and I think a lot of you have learned this as well over the last probably 2 years, really, with this transfer portal stuff, but especially I'd say this past year, don't assume anything. And that's not speaking directly about Ashford. I'm just saying in general, right? I mean, you have to re-recruit every friggin' player, it feels like, every year. So he has 2 years left. From everything that I've been told and everything that I've experienced, whether it be talking with Ashford directly, he loves it here. I mean, my goodness. I say this jokingly. You can't get him to shut up about how excited he is here. He really enjoys it. I mean, shoot, I think of when the transfers, Joe, and you remember when he had a chance to talk to the media, God, it was like, you just brought a kid in that won a golden ticket into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I mean, he was so excited to be able to work with Al Loggins, to work with the quarterbacks in that room, seeing everything that Spencer Rattler did, and just being able to have an opportunity to get coached up because of his experiences. And obviously going to Ole Miss, the coaching change. He just wants to get coached up.
Yeah, I think he was at Auburn before this, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I say Ole Miss, Auburn. I'm thinking Hugh Freeze. That's going back to my Mississippi days.
Yeah. Well, and I was about to follow up with that and say exactly what you were implying, right? I think it's a situation where the grass is just greener over here, right? And that's just for Robbie, right? And I'm not saying that to ding on Auburn, because again, Auburn's probably got some edges on South Carolina that South Carolina doesn't have. But in terms of Robbie Ashford's standpoint and from a quarterback standpoint, I think that should make you feel good that he's just happy to be here, happy to be working with Al Loggins. And, again, Mike, I mean, you're right. His introductory press conference was really good. He handled himself really well. He was, very eager to talk to us and stuff like that. And, I mean, seems at home, right? Seems comfortable. And, I mean, for a quarterback, Mike, especially in the SEC, I think comfort goes a long, long way, right? I think when you're comfortable, right, and it's hard to get comfortable too, because at that position you're under so much scrutiny and everything like that. So yeah, I think with Robbie, he's just comfortable here, and that's such a valuable thing, right? And if you're South Carolina and Shane Beamer, right, that's exactly what you want from a guy like Robbie Ashford, because he's given LaNorris competition, right? And that's exactly what you wanted from the jump. That's why you added a transfer quarterback from the get-go. So again, I think it's all super beneficial. And Robbie, again, the job's not completely, sealed up yet. I mean, they're still going to have to compete, but out of spring practice, it's LaNorris Sellers.
And Joe, And Joe, we talked about this before. Some people may have missed this. We have a big audience today, so appreciate if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever the heck you're watching today. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you're not a subscriber to Gamecock Central, sign up today. Just $1 for your first month. You can't beat that. Get all the insider information, not just on football. Obviously, recruiting is going to start to pick up. I'll tell you right now, if you've paid attention to South Carolina over the last couple of years in the Shane Beamer era, what happens once we get into the month of June? Things start to heat up. So I'd pay extra close attention. Take advantage of signing up for that first month for just $1. If that means you don't get cheese on your burger, the next time you go to Mickey D's or whatever, so be it. You don't like it? And guess what? Next time you go to McDonald's, you can spend that dollar. But I tell you what, you'll enjoy this on top of basketball news. Baseball's starting to pick up too as the Gamecocks look to get ready for postseason play. You get all of it on Gamecock Central. But having said that, Martin says it's refreshing to know that if Sellers twists an ankle, we have a guy that can get the job done with Ashford. And like you said, it's not locked. It's not a lock that Sellers will be the starter, even though I think a lot of us here will say, yeah, okay, Sellers will be the week one guy. Knock on wood that he stays healthy, all that kind of stuff. But we mentioned this before, Joe. If anyone watched that spring game and they walked away saying, man, Ashford's trash or Ashford's this. And that's not saying that the majority of the fan base felt that way. But if there's just one person out there, what I would say is this. We mentioned it a little while ago. Marquis Anderson's back locked up literally right before the start of the spring game in warmups. So now you have the offensive line, which, as Beamer even mentioned in the spring, that they would like to have an additional scholarship player to add some more depth. You lose another one, obviously, now because of Sidney Fugar. But point being is you're already dealing with not having as many scholarship players as you would like. This is coming from the coach. And you divvy them up in the spring game. Well, what happened? Again, Marquis Anderson goes down, and now you're literally playing musical chairs for Team Black. So for Robbie going out there, he's having to run around, and we didn't get to really see as much as I'm sure many of us would have liked to have seen from Robbie, right? Like, what can Robbie really do? Well, unfortunately, when you have that issue combined with the fact that South Carolina has some really talented guys coming off the edge, whether it be in that defensive end room, whether it be outside linebacker. I mean, they have some friggin' dogs. We saw the speed, we saw the length, we've seen the experience too, whether it be at South Carolina, whether it be at other schools that they were playing at before they came in here via the transfer portal. I think the thing that Ashford showed me more than anything, because he only had one pass, was a completion to Mazio Bennett, 14 yards. Nice catch by the true freshman from Greenville.
Rookie. That
Ashford can make things happen with his feet. He can move around. And I think the beauty of it is, well, I'm not saying, Ashford and Sellers are identical by any means. There are a lot of similarities in their game, which will allow South Carolina to not have to just tailor-made a playbook for one person. Because the reality is, yeah, you're only one play away from having to go to your number 2 guy. You're only 2 plays away from going to your number 3 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, go back to Beamer's first year here. I mean, you had a grad student coaching, for crying out loud, with Zeb Nolan. That was a lot of fun, though. Shout out to Zeb beating Vandy to give the Gamecocks that bowl berth, because that played a big role. Coming off the bench, the Iceman. But
nuts, Mike.
I say all that to say that I think Ashford, and I remember, it was a Garnet Trust event the night before the spring game. There were a handful of players there. And one thing that Sellers mentioned to me when we were talking about Ashford, he's like, that kid can sling it. Like, he can sling it. He's had a really good spring. And, could it just be player talk, right? Like, you're not going to speak down about a teammate. Yeah, sure. But you can, and you guys get that. You can read when someone is BSing you and they're just saying, giving you lip service. No, like what Sellers was saying combined with some of the things that I've been told this spring, like he did some good things. And that's not to say, oh, Mike's saying that, Robbie Ashford's going to be a week 1 start. No, because we heard from Beamer, and we'll have it played out in a little bit. It's his job essentially to lose. And with what he did in the spring, what he demonstrated, not just on the field, but from a maturity standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, off the field as well, I think demonstrates why he's the guy. Like he's the guy right now. Having said all that,
Mike, I got one point on Ashford really quickly. I did like this comment from EXO. I don't think Ashford looked bad. He just had a Swiss cheese O line in the spring game, but he seemed to have all the rapport with his guys. Absolutely. Again, I think he's on that right track with capabilities. And then two, I think also he's kind of a similar quarterback to LaNorris in a way, right? I think that's exactly what you saw D'Lo doing, right? In the portal, right? Same type of play style, same type of prototypical guy. So when you can have that lined up, stacked 1, 2, 3, 4 throughout your quarterback room, same type of player, I think that's huge. But that's all I wanted to add about Robbie Ashford. I think he's on the right track. Has a lot of rapport with his guys too.
And again, obviously, I'm being very extreme when I say, "Oh, someone thinks he's trash."
Yeah.
The point being is because I remember seeing some of the comments. They're like, "Man, like, wow, we don't have a backup quarterback outside of Sellers." Everyone like, again, that wasn't necessarily the case. Dante Reno, a kid that should have still been getting ready for his senior prime for crying out loud in high school, comes in, and I've shared this before, but his very first pass play, it was a play action pass, tight end drag to the left. Look wasn't there, went to his second read, and after trusting his progression, made a great throw. Fortunately, it gets called back because of an illegal man downfield. But in a spring game, which is just a glorified practice, Dal Loggins, when he goes back and watches that tape, he's not looking at that saying, man, like, like obviously he's going to cuss out the offensive lineman, but he's looking at that saying, you know what, Reno, good job, kid. Good job by your friggin' true freshman right there. Obviously, he has the interception, Vakari Swain, which I think some people brought up earlier in the show. Man, that competition. I'm still giving the edge to Judge Collier just because he has the experience of starting in 2 games last year. Just assuming OD Fortune will be the other starting corner. But man, Vakari Swain, I mean, he's putting pressure on Judge. And I think more importantly, regardless of who is that other starting corner across from OD, you're trying to find at least 3 corners that you can trust. In a perfect world, you'd love to have 4, but having 3, Vakari certainly did a good job. But Vakari baits Reno, intercepts him. That's something that as a young quarterback, you're going to have to learn that those windows close a hell of a lot quicker than high school, son. You're not in Connecticut anymore. So, but what did Reno do? Reno comes out, throws a touchdown pass, which just shows just that ability to be able to bounce back, especially as a young player. So I think there was a lot of good that we saw in just the very vanilla-ness of the offense in that spring game. But I think Ashford was one of those players. It was just really difficult to make an assessment outside of the fact that he can extend plays with his feet simply because he didn't have the time to be able to throw the ball downfield.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I'm all in favor for it. Again, we'll see how it shapes out, right? I think it'll be interesting how it all works out during the summer. Camp it's coming up, Mike. We're close. Just a couple more individual workouts away, and then
that's right.
We'll be in August, man. Snap your fingers. We'll be there.
So if you didn't have a chance to see it, this is Shane Beamer from last night. We'll play a little bit of it. The TV guy in me pissed off about this shot that I had. So I apologize. What are you going to do? I mean, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to yell at the sun shining through. It'd be beautiful. We could have friggin' spun him around, but hey, it is what it is. So I say that to most of you. You probably don't care. You just want to hear what he says, but I apologize that he looks a little pale. Here's Shane Beamer last night, right off the bat, talking about LaNorris Sellers. And again, we'll pause some of this. We'll try to play as much as we can. But again, Shane Beamer last night. Welcome home tour in Florence.
No, I mean, I'll tell you guys what I told LaNorris and all the quarterbacks coming out of spring practice. Coming out of spring practice, LaNorris is our starting quarterback. But just like all of our positions, that we will continue to compete at all positions. So I told Robbie Ashford the moment I say that at a Gamecock Club event, the headline is going to be Beamer names LaNorris Sellers starting quarterback. LaNorris is the starting quarterback coming out of spring. And now, like I told LaNorris and like I told Robbie did a great job during spring practice along with our other quarterbacks. LaNorris did a great job, and I expect LaNorris to continue to compete and continue to earn that position as well. You guys know from being here, I mean, going into 2022, nobody thought that Nicky Mamori and DQ Smith were going to be starting safeties because we had two seniors that they were behind. And we got into week 2 and they became starters, so it's the same thing. We don't all of a sudden name someone, Debo Williams, as our starting linebacker coming out of spring practice, but he needs to have a great summer to continue to be the starting linebacker. So that's where we are. And I had those conversations with those guys the Monday after the spring game.
And you got a date for
I'm a therapist who goes to therapy, and some people think that's strange. The thing is, though, therapists are human beings.
preseason camp starting tentative?
It's August. It's the first Thursday in August. I think it's the 3rd is when they report, and then the first practice would be on that Friday. That's what it is tentatively. Could potentially get moved up a day, but I was actually working on that all day today, just preseason practice schedules, and that's kind of what we have right now, and trying to get that solidified here soon.
Because that's the 3rd's the date of the soccer game, right? The big one?
Whatever that Saturday is.
Okay,
I think soccer's on Saturday, I think, right? Is that right? I hope so. So the schedule that day will be a little bit different because of it. So let's figure this thing out right now, David. Excuse me, August 1st is a Thursday. August 2nd would be the first practice at this point. So the first Friday in August is practice. Thursdays when they report, and then Saturday is soccer, from what I understand.
Speaking of things in stone, we have a couple transfers. Is anything official yet that you can talk about?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
How do you feel that you've addressed some of the things that you needed to address with some recent transfer portal activity?
Yeah, I feel good. Coming out of spring practice, I think I talked about it publicly. There were some positions that depth-wise we weren't where we wanted to be, just from a scholarship number standpoint. Offensive line was one of them. Not saying that we were not good on the offensive line, but just to be able to practice, having a certain number of guys on scholarship, we weren't there from a lineman standpoint. At receiver, we had some areas to address as well, and that was what we went into the portal. Those two positions were essentially primary needs and a primary, portal targets for us. Feel like we've addressed it well. Still not done. Obviously, the portal's closed, but if you're in the portal, you can still take visits as well. So that's still going on with us and other colleges as well. So we'll see how it finishes in the end, but I like where we are right now and like where we're headed also.
What was the day like, or the hours leading up to when the portal closes? I mean, how tense is that for you? Are you on the phone? What does that look like?
It was intense, but it wasn't like we had all these conversations going up until 11:59 p.m. I told my wife over that weekend, I'm like, it's eerily quiet, like too quiet in some ways, but it was great. And actually, when everything closed, or during the last couple of days, was when I was in Georgia for that golf event with some other head coaches from across the country. So I think we were all in the same boat. We're all sitting here in a hotel ballroom raising money for charity, but we're all worried about the same things. And even some of that, I wonder if he's trying to take one of my guys and all that as well. So we were all together. A lot of us were on that trip, and it was good. A lot of that, I think, was done. Credit our players. A lot of that, I won't say was done, but we had some great, healthy conversations back in January when guys decided to come back for another year. We had, you guys know, I told you when I saw some of y'all in Columbia that, and I talked about it after the game, the number of individual meetings I had. So I had some healthy conversations with 100, however many players, 10 players after spring practice, and we addressed some things. But it was great. It's credit to the players in our program and what we're doing as a program. It wasn't like I had hard conversations where guys were making demands and things like that. Like always, we were honest with people about where they stood, and our guys believe in what we're doing. And they've been overall, the team's been a really hungry, driven group since January, and spring practice was just the culmination of one part of it. Now they're eager to attack the summer, and I see that with a lot of guys that are still in Columbia right now, and they don't have to be. They're just they're in the building and working out, and eager to get going for summer school next month.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you've already addressed this, but how many guys are staying around thereabouts in May on campus?
I'd say right now, a lot of our offensive linemen are here. I think most of the offensive linemen have stayed. Rashawn Lee got his wisdom teeth out today, so I did that in college too. So I think he went back to Virginia to have that procedure when it was done to recover from that. But the bulk of our offensive line is here. I know I saw Luke Doty was in the weight room this morning as well. So total, if we're going to have 120 players on the team right now, I'd say, a fifth of the team is there right now. But I want them to be able to get away too in the month of May. It's a long summer. It's a long season. I want them to be able to kind of get away mentally and physically, catch their breath. But most of our guys, if they are at home, they're working out regularly. A lot of our guys are getting together in some different locales across the country to work out, train, throw for a few days during the month of May. So they're still hard at work, but if able to, I want them to be able to get away from Columbia a little bit.
So there you go. Shane Beamer. We'll get back to it a little bit. Joe, ever get your wisdom teeth yanked?
I've not. No, I never had them yanked, thankfully. Never had
painful.
Almost
painful.
bad. There was a week or two where it was hurting bad, but the doctor's like, nah, keep them in there, tough it out, kid.
I got the bottom two out. They give you some stuff for it, but yeah, you're out of commission for a couple of days. You got all your very loopy post procedure. So Vershawn Lee, you got 3 taken out. Yeah, that I just hope I don't have the top ones out, because the longer they're in there, I mean, I'm not a dentist or anything, but
knock on wood, I don't have to get them taken out.
Oh, the longer they're in there, the more it hurts when they get yanked out. At least that's what I've been said. But again, I'm not a dentist. All right, Joe, what did you make of some of the things that Shane had to say there? I mean, I think one thing that really stood out when he talked about the number of players here, I mean, we've seen players in the past stay up here. They're committed. I mean, but I think more than anything, especially, we don't have like an actual list or release yet of what players or who are going to be staying here, but especially the new guys, right? The guys that transferred in, I think it's massive for them to be able to stay up here. And like Shane said, you want them to be able to go home, have fun, do whatever they need to do to be able to decompress for a little bit before getting back into the swing of things by coming back at the end of May. But once you get back here, and we've seen the videos, I mean, straight the conditioning coach, Luedecke, will put them through the ringer. But I also think, too, from talking to people, I think we're going to see some changes from a physical standpoint with a lot of these guys. I think one player that keeps getting just mentioned to me from talking to people close to the program is Josiah Thompson.
Yep.
And just what he could look like. Now, I think the thing that is tricky about it is because he's so freaking tall, people forget that he weighs over 300 pounds. He's kind of like that basketball frame in a sense. But I think more than anything, what's going to help him, and especially some of the offensive linemen, the young guys, the true freshmen that are here, and even some of the guys that are, heading into their second year at the program, being able to continue, and I say this about offensive linemen, I could say this about anyone really, continue to work off some of the baby fat and turn that into muscle. And nowadays you have, with a lot of these high schools, there are some, tremendous strength and conditioning coaches out there, or they have their own personal trainers that they're working with when they're in high school, but you can't replicate what you get in college. I mean, I remember the transition, not that I look like a jolly green giant by any means, but it's incredible just the difference of being able to be in a college weightlifting program for a year, but especially when you have the opportunity in the summer too. I mean, you'll see some big gains. So I think that was noticeable, especially in the defensive line, how big some of these players are. But I think we're going to continue to see that, because that's been something that fans have, I don't know if gripe's the right word, but they have been very outspoken about. That it's like, hey, we're trying to win games in the SEC. This doesn't look like SEC players, or at least in terms of size of the offensive line and defensive line. Well, in the last couple of years, especially the last 2 recruiting cycles, I'd say, and whether that be from the high school ranks, whether it be via the transfer portal, Gamecocks have really attacked it, especially those 2 positional groups. But they've also been able to go out, get players that they've been able to develop and get bigger as well. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping close attention on.
Yeah, most certainly, Mike, and I agree. Big Red saying it here too. I think at this point, just where you're at in the year, from everything that Shane said, that's my biggest thing, right? I think it should be the biggest thing. Big Red hitting the nail on the head here too. Our guys staying on campus is key to success, especially our lines of scrimmage. Maybe build chemistry. Yeah, no, not maybe, definitely build chemistry. I think that's the biggest thing, right? I talked about it with Wes on my show. Some of these offensive linemen, right? And Wes was saying that, the summer's going to be big because they're, kind of slimming the group down, right? And you're going to get chemistry with your 5 or 6 guys and stuff like that. So I think, guys being on campus, it's big because, you're not really doing a whole lot and you're working out with each other, right? And you kind of just get to see Columbia as it kind of dies down with graduation and stuff. You really get to appreciate this place. So it certainly builds chemistry, right? Because you guys are the only guys on campus. So I think it's big for chemistry, one thing, but then also being in the facility, familiarizing yourself, right? Obviously you do want to get your guys home a little bit, get some of the home cooking, see mom, pops, all that stuff, see the fam. But I think it's big that guys are on campus. It means they're committed. It means they want to be here, want to continue to grind and be ready for the summer. I think that's the biggest thing, right? When guys are sticking around, it's like, they don't want to miss a beat and they want to be ready to go attack it when it comes to Luedecke, because they know Coach Day is not going to be easy on them come end of May, early June, right? I mean, Mike, you've seen them running stadium steps out there in June. It does not look fun at all out there in that dying heat. So Luedecke certainly won't be easy on them. And again, I think, just the biggest thing for me is like all these guys staying in town. It's certainly going to help with chemistry, number 1, but then 2, I mean, they're going to be more than ready for summer workouts, and that's a big thing. And then you mentioned the lines of scrimmage too. I think looking the part is the biggest step up for this year, right? You have guys in all positions, right? And even the depth. Now, just talk about your defensive tackle position really quickly. I mean, at the last couple of years, it had just been Boogie Huntley and Tonka Hemingway that looked the part, right? Now you have other guys, especially in the defensive end room. Dylan Stewart certainly looks the part. Man, oh man, that guy looks like a killer right now. So I think that's the biggest thing. And, it's going to be the biggest jump, I think, in year 3. We're in 3. This is year 3, right?
Year 4.
Year 4. Yeah, I know. I'm losing track here, right? I think that'll be the biggest jump in year 4, right? You're going to see across the board. You're going to see an SEC football team, and that's going to be the biggest jump. And I think it'll pay off too. So certainly a lot of things to watch coming out of the spring. But again, I think, the guys that are staying on campus are certainly going to develop chemistry and be ready for summer workouts.
You mentioned those summer workouts. Maybe Luedecke can welcome Manchester United to Liverpool so they can get ready for the Columbia Heat as they get ready.
Maybe needs to welcome me too, because I got to get ready for that 40-yard dash, man.
Yeah. So just real quickly, want to run through a couple questions that people had. Then I'm going to play one soundbite. We're going to wrap up this show, giving you a little bonus today, hour plus on Gamecock Central. If you missed any of our show on GC Live, head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page where you can watch this show in its entirety, as well as the podcast platform where Gamecock Central Network is located wherever you listen to your podcast. Delvin Campbell, the transfer from Nevada, 6'4". He's coming on in. So that's one of your wide receiver transfers that, to your question, Jonathan. And in addition to that, say this one more time, Vandrevius Jacobs, transfer from Florida State. The interesting thing about Jacobs is he redshirted this past year at Florida State. He has a lot of potential, a lot of talent coming out of high school, and he has 4 years of eligibility remaining. So he has an opportunity to work with Mike Furry and be able to grow and be able to get better. Certainly something that the Gamecocks will gladly welcome. They're also looking at the offensive line. That's something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. Martin said, I'm still concerned with the offensive line. The D-line looked dominant against them in the spring. In spring, even the beginning of summer, defenses are typically going to be ahead of the offense. That's just how football usually goes. That's not to make any excuses, but that's just the reality of it. Now, combine that with the fact that there were several players in the offensive line that were banged up this spring. it put a wrench into what they were trying to do from a plan standpoint. Having said that, the good thing is a lot of players were able to get extra reps. That's one thing that Lonnie Teasley said they wanted to pay extra close attention to this spring, was really fine-tuning the ability to play multiple positions and really being able to cross-train because of the circumstances that plagued this team on the offensive line last year. Cocky Joe says, kind of related. Any updates on upgrades to Williams-Brice and the property around it? Nothing yet. I know there's been the talks about, being able to get a battery similar to the Braves. Shout out to the Sox tonight. Beat the Braves so that all you Atlanta fans will get pissed off. That will be behind the ops building. We haven't heard anything, but I was told in the fall, especially with NIL, a lot of the deals have a lot of the projects. I'm not saying this is the main reason why. A lot of projects that South Carolina is trying to do from an athletic standpoint, and some of this is athletics, some of it is they're putting the focus right now on NIL. So we'll have to stay tuned on that. Jacob says, what's the rule on redshirting? Is it 3 or 4 games? It is 4 games. Now, to give you more of a popsicle headache, you go back to the 2022 season, the NCAA, leading up to bowl season, they granted teams the opportunity to play a player in an additional 5th game that year. So if you really want to give yourself a popsicle headache over the next couple of years, you go back, you go on websites, and you're trying to figure out, all right, this guy played in 4 games, this guy played in 5 games. Wait a minute, how is he able to come back and play for a 6th season or whatever the case may be? Well, you got COVID in there and maybe you got a redshirt year, but that redshirt year was also there because of playing in 5 games instead of 4. So 5, though, with the bowl game. It wasn't 5 in the regular season. It's going to make for a popsicle headache nightmare. What else we got here before we wrap things up? We got a lot of people having questions coming on in here. We'll play. So let's just get to this. Talking about the transfer portal. Okay, we're not going to be able to get to everything today, and I apologize. I know there's a lot more questions that are coming on in. Big show today. We appreciate everyone that's watching. Again, Facebook, YouTube, wherever. If you missed any of our program, head on back to the Gamecock Central YouTube page where you can watch this show in its entirety. Also on the Gamecock Central Podcast Network. And also be sure to subscribe to Gamecock Central. Just $1 for your first month. Plenty of recruiting news going on, as well as baseball as the Gamecocks get ready to make a postseason push. Basketball recruiting going on today. Unfortunately, the Gamecocks lost a recruit, but we have updates on the way for you, so be sure to follow Gamecock Central for that. Having said all that, Joe, when you look at the scholarship number, 85, well, USC's at that mark right now. So how are they still going into the portal? There were a couple things that Shane said. There's one thing in particular that really stood out, but I want you guys to take a listen. We'll discuss on the other side, and then we'll wrap things up. So take a listen. Shane Beamer last night talking about how South Carolina handles still being able to go into the portal based on their current status with how many scholarships they have left, which, spoiler, they have none.
At all the projections about, okay, looks like there's 85 scholarships that are supposed to be. How do you go about that? Because I know from the NFL standpoint, when you talk about salary cap, they say the cap is crap because you can manipulate it. I don't know if manipulate's the right word for scholarship, but how do you go about that? Because, you look at it, it's like, wait a minute, how do they have any scholarships still left?
Yeah. Good question. I don't know if manipulate is the word. Certainly with name, image, and likeness is a different avenue now. To be able to get creative if needed. We're really not, but that's something that some schools are from that standpoint. It's conversations that conversations that we've had with guys as well. There's the rule that if you've graduated, you can still go in the portal if you're a graduate. So there may be a situation with that transpires as well. So we're very healthy from a scholarship number standpoint right now, always trying to be creative, but we're capped by the scholarship roster number, but we're also capped by the overall roster number, meaning scholarships and walk-ons also. So that's a number that we're trying to balance also, that all that stuff will sort itself out before we start practice in August.
Sort yourself out. And I think it's a good way to put it. I think it's a good way to put it. But to explain a little bit more what Shane was trying to say about NIL, and I think some of you understand this, but for those of you who are like, wait a minute, what is he talking about? Let's say we got Joey Four-Star over here, and he's in the transfer portal, and South Carolina wants to bring him in, but they're full on their scholarship numbers. Well, how can you get around that? Well, with NIL now, maybe Joey Four-Star Machiko over here, you're able to give him, and I'm just going to make up numbers. I have no idea how much tuition costs at certain schools. So we'll just say, tuition costs like, I don't know, we'll say like 50,000. That would be like, with everything, tuition, board, all that stuff that would typically come from that you'd get from a scholarship standpoint. They're going to throw 50,000 at you, and then on top of it, they're going to give you like another 75,000 or 100,000. So with that money, you're able to create essentially an 86th scholarship. Now, obviously, there's things inside if you really want to be pulling hairs here. There's certain rules with players who get iPads and all. There's different things internally, but fans typically aren't going to lose sleep over that if they're, again, being able to bring in Joey Four-Star. So I think the bigger point of it all is I think South Carolina, and I think it's a good point that Beamer brought up. This is something that essentially, when we look at these scholarship numbers, and I don't want to, because like he mentioned, I mean, there's a number in general too with walk-ons involved, and they're going to be around that 120 mark. That if you have 85 scholarships and they're all used, I would say it's 85 plus now, because there could be that player or two that you get creative for in order to find a way to create a scholarship for them. So, Joe, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. That's not to say South Carolina, again, based on what Beamer said, that they've done it, but shoot, in this new era, if you have the money, why not? Why not look at that, especially if you feel like there is a player in the portal that you desperately want and you're already pretty full. And that's, again, basically what Beamer said. Some other things sometimes will take care of itself too. Like there could be some players right now on this roster that have scholarships. They're going to kind of just look at the situation. There could be a player or two. Who knows? Maybe things change between now and August 1st. But if the rules are the way they are, whether we like them or not, why not take advantage of it? Why not take advantage? If you have the ability to essentially create an 86th or 87th scholarship, why not take advantage of it, especially if you have the funds to do so via the collective?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you might as well, right? I think college football and collegiate athletics, as we know it, is evolving. So I think it's, certainly worth the shot, right? Use your resources, use whatever you've got. I did like this question from Martin. Mike, I'm sure, I don't know if you have an answer to this one, because I don't think they can, right? Because he's already on scholarship. He signed his letter of intent to play.
So he's on football. Yeah, so he's for football. Bottom line is he's on football.
Yeah,
he's on football.
I was going to say it's hard to explain, but yeah, they can.
You see with baseball, right? I mean, I'm trying to think back. I mean, I know there's been multiple players. You think of a Brandon McElwain. You could go back to the basketball days too, when you had football and basketball players. But yeah, bottom line, yeah, he's
Notre Dame's doing it. I mean, they were trying to do it with a lacrosse kid, Jordan Faison, that wide receiver. And so he was trying to get a lacrosse scholarship and then walk on to the football team. And they turned out that he was, a better football player. So he had to take the football scholarship and walk on a lacrosse team. So whatever that I think the priority sport is, there's a bunch more rules that go into it and all of that. But I think it's the primary sport for Harbor. So he's got to be a scholarship football player.
Yep. Joe, let's hit some ads. We'll wrap things up with our final thoughts on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Our first ad of the day. Our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Tax ID is an uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for a refund, call on the tax team at Liberty Tax. They're fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood, open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in, give a call to upload your tax documents. And when you come in, your return will be ready to view and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576. Once again, on your screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs. That's our good friends over at Liberty Tax.
Today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond over at Movement Mortgage. If you're in the process of purchasing a home, trying to find the lowest rate in the market, which if you're one of those fortunate ones out there, not to brag or anything, if you were fortunate a couple of years ago to be able to get that rate in that 3% window, you're feeling pretty good. But if you weren't able to, especially trying to purchase a home now, you understand that it's tough right now. You're trying to find the lowest rate. Clint and his team can help you out. They can make that process a hell of a lot easier for you, the same exact way he was able to for our very own Wes Mitchell, as well as former Gamecock quarterback and captain Perry Orth. Give him a call at 803-771-6933. So, Joe, I said we're going to have final thoughts on the other side of it, but I think you can see the people have spoken. The tardiness. Intern Joe, the fam spoke about the tardiness. We've decided you need. It wasn't a mini mayo bath. What it was push-ups. So I don't know. I mean, it's tough to do it where you're at right now. I'm not going to have. I don't know if it's a bed in the background. I mean, that might make the video look like you're doing something else. Yeah, we don't need to do that.
I'm not going to.
Yeah, we don't need you to do.
Maybe next week. Next week I'll find a way to do it. I will make up my push-ups on the show next week. We'll do some push-ups. I don't know about a mini mayo bath, Travis. Come on now. Like even if it's a mini, like if you're dumping even one thing of mayo on my I don't know about that. But I'll do the push-ups next week. We'll figure that out, and then I guess we can include the smoking Wes Mitchell in the 40 along with that punishment. That's a little bit more punishment for Wes, I think, but
Oh yeah, the West or Joe 40. That was the question on Sunday. Someone said Mike or Joe in the 40. Joe, come on, man.
Come on, old man.
You're smart.
Line it up. Mike, honestly, I think you might have an edge on me. I'm a big boy. I think I have not traditionally run a very fast 40. And since I don't know if there's anyone from South Bend back home watching this, but they're probably laughing and saying he's right. So I don't know, Mike. I think
I still move. I definitely
run the bases. And
I definitely have lost a step or two since my college days, but
I'm out of shape too.
Hey, man. There's a reason why I played corner in college with not having a lot of size. So, had a little speed to me. But then again, those are the glory days.
At the beginning of the show next week. I'll make sure of it. We will
insert the song "Glory Days" playing in the background as I just said that. But yeah, we'll do that. Look at Travis, Mike, the disrespect. I know, right? Travis, unbelievable. You know what, Joe? If you're fortunate to reach your 30s one day, you know what?
Yeah, God bless.
You're old. That's old. Unbelievable.
Nope. Just adding fuel to the fire, man. Just trying. You guys are testing me here, asking me if realistically, I think I could smoke you guys, but I gotta be real. I don't want to hurt your feelings too bad, so
Then you get the media. They talked about getting the media Olympics or whatever the heck they were going to call it. Here's the issue, though. Here's the issue. Okay, in my mind, I still think I'm young, and even though take care of myself, go to the gym, and all that. As many people that are listening out there, once you get into your 30s, 40s, 50, all it takes, though, you friggin' run this the wrong way, that hamstring goes. That's my biggest fear. And it's not even about the video going everywhere and that thing just being up there forever. is
I wouldn't
just
post
dealing with the friggin' hamstring and hopping around and looking like a jabroni. So that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, and
Because again,
my
I
biggest
know
fear is
I know I'm getting older. I know
Yeah.
look, I know I'm
I'm
losing
gonna
my
get called
fast.
slow on the internet, Mike. I don't know what's worse, pulling a hammy or like actually just being slow and not pulling a hammy and not having an excuse, just being naturally slow. Because I'm not the fastest guy in the world. I
Well,
couldn't stretch a ball to the wall all the way
that's what you
around,
gotta do, man.
on the bases. So
The pliability, the TB12 method.
I already
Speaking
started
of,
training for the 40 with Wes. So I guess I got to start training for my push-ups and stuff too.
I love it. We'll love it. Yeah, the TB12 method. And we'll leave it at that. Maybe we'll have the roast of intern Joe one day. We'll see
Lord.
that. Again, appreciate everyone that tuned in today. YouTube, podcast network for Gamecock Central. You can listen to it. You can watch it. You can go back and you'll have it all. And again, take advantage of the GC special, $1 for your first month. This is the time to do it. I'm telling you, things are starting to heat up right now. And not just football, but from a football standpoint, recruiting's really going to start to pick up these next couple of weeks as we head into June. And Wes, Chris, me, we'll have everything covered for you. We'll have everything covered for you. So be sure to follow along. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Yu. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Be sure to tune in on Thursday for Foul Balls at 2:00 in place of GC Live afternoon drive. We're going to have some baseball talk for you on Thursday. Joe, you going to be on there with Jack?
Yeah, Jack and I every week off GC Live Foul Balls. Jack finally he's joining the GC Live family, man. I'm with it. So now Jack's helping us out with Foul Balls, our weekly baseball show. Obviously helps alleviate some of the stress with Mike in 2 weekly football shows.
No, I'm trying to keep my hairline. I mean, you're telling me like I'm old here. I got to, the wrinkles, the hairline. I mean, shoot. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. So, and I'm sure Mike will pop in at some point, talk some baseball as things heat up. Obviously, we're headed around the home stretch, right? So one more big series against Georgia, and then you're on the road against number 1 Tennessee. So, and then you hit the postseason. So baseball's heating up. Jack Veltry's doing a great job with it so far. Did a great job out in Como last weekend. So yeah, join us Thursday at 2:00 for GC Live Foul Balls, all of your baseball coverage. Right there.
That's right. Gamecocks have their final home series this weekend against Georgia. Then they're going to travel to Tennessee. Vols and many polls are listed as the number 1 team in the land, and that will do it for the regular season. So we're coming down the stretch for Gamecock baseball, no question about it. Again, appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and enjoy the rest of your week. And go Sox.